Are you a venture capitalist, family office, or about to launch your own angel syndicate? Then this week's sponsor could be your next trusted partner. This episode was produced in cooperation with Leva, the leading platform in Switzerland to set up and manage your SPVs and syndicate your deal flow. Leva allows you to set up SPVs from your computer in just 5 minutes, starting from as little as 1,000 Swiss francs. As you know, Swisspreneur runs its own syndicate, and we've been using Leva since our first deal. We couldn't be happier with them. If you're currently setting up your syndicate or structuring your club deal, we recommend you to check out their website, www.leva.pe. That's LEVA.pe. And contact the team for a quick demo.
If you jump into even an early stage company or whatever that already exists, even if a lot is to be built, and it's not the same than the blank sheet, right? I think it's easier to finish a story than to write it from scratch.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Vincent, a very welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's such a pleasure to meet you here in Vevey today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me here. Pleasure.
You are the co-founder of Nexthink, a leader in digital employee experience management software, and also one of the very rare Swiss unicorn companies. Before we talk about your journey from startup to unicorn status, I actually want to start with your personal background. You studied computer science and then worked at Cisco for 7 years before starting your own venture. So back then, if you think back to these days, what was the professional landscape looking like for you? What were your plans and ambitions as a young professional?
So maybe we can start a little bit even earlier, because
Sure.
Initially I was not probably built to be in computer. When I was young, I had even my brother or friends, they were playing with the first computers, the Atari and things like that, but I was not at all into that. And later I found out that many colleagues were actually, which were my age, were actually more like geeks at this time already, which I wasn't. I was more into sports, and as a matter of fact, I didn't pursue a lot of studying. I went into a sport career in cycling, and I only did, only in code, which later on turned to be pretty useful for practical things in life, but I did an apprenticeship as a mechanic. Mm-hmm. So nothing to do with computer and digital stuff. But after my sport career, I started to work again, but with not a lot of various opportunities. I ended up working in a manufacturing plant, which wasn't really fun, and I looked how I could reintegrate the academic world, which wasn't that easy after 5-6 years, on the bike, on the racing, and having an outside life more than something on a chair. But I could actually rejoin by doing some initial little courses and exams, and I could start the computer science engineering school, and from there I had a chance to start at Cisco, which I didn't know really the company because I had no real background in technology. So it was a great opportunity to learn a lot of things, right? I had opportunity to attend a lot of training courses and classes. And at this time, I actually got hired as a complete junior, which wasn't really the policy at Cisco. It was much more, we hire the best of the best and so on. But they run out of talent, right? It was in 1997. And they started this first sort of junior academy, engineering, networking, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was, the lucky one in Switzerland to start as such. And I think nowadays we are back into that with a lot of shortage in competencies, for example, cybersecurity, or probably energy transition. I was also reading articles that we need more, knowledgeable people, and they don't exist. So probably the private sector, like we did back then, had to actually do the education to catch up, and probably also the public or whatever education has to also take over. But so it was very similar, I would say, to now. A lot of new stuff, a lot of uncertainties as well, but a lot of opportunities at the same time. So I had this great opportunity to learn about networking, internet, and mainly about market transition, which I think is the secret of successful companies and entrepreneurship as well.
Talking about market transition, what did you take away from these big companies, Cisco that you worked for? What was the learning there that you could then later also apply in your own venture?
Yeah, so there were two learnings. One was very personal, but was due to a global effect which I had no control on, which was the internet bubble explosion, right? So as everybody at Cisco and many of those internet companies, Silicon Valley based, everybody was virtually a millionaire, even you were like 30 years old or whatever with no experience, with stock options that potentially will, were actually doubling every year in value plus splitting. So it was like a factor of 4 or whatever. So, but suddenly, you move from having virtually a lot of potential to nothing. And here what I learned was, okay, don't count on hypothesis things. And there are, a lot of things out there that you cannot control yourself. And you have no influence, and you have no way to actually predict that. And there is also, probably there were ways to predict, but it was blindsided by, so too much optimistic of unrealistic potential.
Right.
And that was one learning. The second was when it was I learned that, you can be, it's somehow in quote easy to be leading a market, but it's even faster to get left behind. So Cisco was not necessarily the leader in many domains when I was there. It was also, and there were companies that were big competition, much bigger than us, that 5-6 years later, they were not even on the market anymore.
Wow.
And, you can name 3Com or others. So whether they were acquired and completely diluted in something else or just run out of business. And we all know probably more than the one I mentioned, but probably a company like Nokia is exactly, it wasn't really at exactly the same time and exactly the same market. But yeah, I learned that directly because it happened. And what I found out was what the company did well was really to transition and reinvent ourselves, faster than other, or actually doing it than doing nothing. And that was really something I learned. So basically, maybe unconsciously you reapply those two things, which is, do the things with what you have concretely and not virtually and hypothetically. And, don't remain too long in your comfortable zone.
Absolutely. And I can imagine your professional sports, your professional cycling career also helped you to really embed that, because there you also had to act in similar ways, right? You had to take race by race, you had to focus on what you could control. So that was probably a similar mindset to what you then took away also from the big corporates.
True, and in sport, it's even worse because you don't have this, things can change almost over a minute or an hour or a week, right? Yeah. You can be in good condition and feeling well, and suddenly things are not going for you well physically, mentally, and so on. Where in business, if you have a good trajectory, even if you screw things up, there is a time where it will continue to grow, or you don't have this cut that is as hard as it could be in sport. But yeah, it's true. So you learn how to adapt very much, and also you learn how to deal with when you lose, or I mean, it's not just win or lose, but it's basically you learn. There are much more things that go wrong than go really well, right? Because it's all on you. You can read the classification, you can make ranking. You go down or up, and you also learn that. If you have, let's say you're sick or whatever for a period, so when you go back, you're not in great shape. And then you learn that what is more important than the actual result of one single event is much more the trend and the trajectory you take. If you are on a trend that day after day, week after week, you're improving your aptitude, one day you will be back in the, where you want to be. And also that's exactly in business. What is important is not to celebrate too much, a single successful effect, which can be related to, sometimes not a trend that is consistently improving, but sometimes you have this, which is good to have, right? But this single magical effect can be a little bit of luck, a little bit of positive circumstances. Take it, but don't consider it as an achievement of something that is sustainable and that you can, and repeatable.
Don't forget the bigger picture to track the progress there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you had your professional sports career, you had your corporate career, and then you decided to start your own company. Where does that entrepreneurial drive come from? Was that just like the next logical step for you, or did you have entrepreneurs in your family that inspired you to also start and run your own company?
I don't think that was a logical thing, right? Because if I think back about all this, and if I look at other entrepreneurs and other innovation or things that are starting from scratch, because that's the big change, right? Yeah. Basically, if you jump into even an early stage company or whatever that already exists, even if a lot is to be built, and it's not the same than the blank sheet, right? Yeah. I think it's easier to finish a story than to write it from scratch. Mm-hmm. It's hard to finish it very well. That's something else, right? But starting from scratch is a specific thing, which I'm not sure you plan on that, right? I mean, and if you do, it can be pretty stressful, because you cannot decide, okay, I want to start something from scratch, but what, right? That would be the question, right? And I think it goes more the other way around. You get suddenly inspired by something or someone or both, and passionate about, the purpose and then you realize, well, if we want to do that, it doesn't exist anywhere. We have to start it from scratch. And then, well, why you do it at that moment, there can be many reasons. But in my situation, it was really suddenly you have this conjunction of different things that aligns at a certain moment, and you say, okay, I met this incredible people with this crazy idea that I would like to be part of, and let's go, right? And I think it a little bit, you have to be crazy and maybe also naive, but very quickly you have to work hard and be, I think, very creative, resilient, and passionate, because just the very beginning, sentiment, fade away pretty quickly to be replaced by efforts and hard work, I would say.
Definitely. You mentioned the importance of the people. In that case, these were your co-founders. You started Nexthink in 2004 with 3 founders in total, you, Pedro, and also Patrick.
Yes.
Where did you meet Pedro and Patrick?
Okay, so basically we had this unique opportunity to have, first of all, it was in software, right? Mm-hmm. Enterprise software. So my background in this was not coding software, was more whether selling, promoting as product marketing, or installing as a sales engineer or things like that. But what I learned at Cisco, which was good, because what we had in terms of pure software, like network management, which was probably the closest adjacent thing that Cisco was doing that Nexthink did, our network management software were maybe doing a good work, but one thing that was always not properly done, probably changed since, but was really the user interface. So because I think Cisco came from a hardware with the time where the power was in command line interface, so typing commands and like a real engineer, and then doing things graphically was not really probably the best asset of the company. And it was also, I think, on one hand, it was a question of mindset, but also a question of process. I think they were more, it was we have to build a user interface for that thing. And it was done at the end. So for me, it was like, if one day I do my own software, we have to do that really well because it changed the game. And when you build something that is about data and information and analysis and observability, image speaks more than words.
It's super important.
So it's super important. So what happened was, no idea about coding a product. Pedro had the back-end ID and patent, if you want, of, not if I want, it was patented with EPFL on capturing the data and injecting the data into this artificial intelligence engine. So back in 2004, AI was not that,
it wasn't a buzzword yet.
No, it was not a buzzword, but it was even the opposite. It was a little bit more like people tried, in the 70s, 80s to do AI for like IBM, for chess player,
right.
or speech recognition, but was never really a breakthrough thing. It was more a failure than a success for at least the mass. But anyway, so we had this, and then Patrick he is a pure user experience, user interface expert. So basically, I was with this people who could do the perfect, product, and I was here with a lot of market knowledge and also market contact. So to go take a prototype, trying to have it in a real world enterprise, to face the reality. So we could do that from scratch, which I think is, I'm not saying it's never like that, but it's very rare, right? Whether you have business people that know what they want, but they need to, for example, outsource the development. So it's hard to be very creative and very innovative. Or you have technical people which thinks their idea would sell itself because it's so unique and incredibly well designed, which it is, but you miss this, package thing.
You need both, right?
Yeah,
you need someone
both.
who can build it and someone who can sell it, basically.
And then, and then when you're very small, it's hard to recruit because not that people don't exist, but the problem is when you're very small, and you're not a founder, it's very hard to be part of the team, right? Part of the, the idea, because so whether you find great people to do, product engineering or marketing or sales later, once you have a little bit of, I know what the customer wants, we have at least the first commercialized, industrialized product, we know how to sell it, we have a little recipe. It's a little bit like a restaurant, right?
Sure.
Most cook, they do what they know, right? But the ones who invent a recipe, they're not so many, right? And it's not because the recipe is written that the first time you repeat it, anyone can do, right? There is also a little bit of, you have to, what you do with your hands counts. So it's not just, it takes time until it's commoditized in some way. So yes, so we had this great, I would say, complementary skills, knowledge, and yet common, I would say, shared vision, not just for the company and this, but also, why we do what we do and where we want to go. Although things change, but there was no completely contradictory way to look at things, and that was great. So
basically, like shared values, that the way that you want to do things and the way that you want to work together, but also complementary skill sets to make it work.
yes, and I think the complementary skill sets were something obvious that you could also realize and materialize by looking at the people and talking. The common ground, I think, was, I don't think we had the maturity at that time to make an analysis of that. I think it was more luck or feeling than facts, right? Yeah. I remember at this time, I don't think I analyzed that because I didn't realize how important that is. But luckily, I think it ended up to be not something conflicting, where now I do a lot of involvement with other startup projects where I see sometimes conflicts coming. They usually come from, these alignments that were actually already there at the beginning, but they were not expressed and visible, and because they were not investigated. Because usually you don't know you have to do, and if you know, it's hard to do because whether you know a little bit in advance, so you do it just to comfort yourself, okay. But if you have a doubt, it's hard to dig into a doubt because when you feel a doubt, there is a lot of chance that actually it's become true. Right. And then you're like, it's a lot of disappointment. Yeah. And then what's the solution if you know that, right? So sometimes you say, okay, maybe it resolves itself over time, which usually doesn't.
No, it just comes back stronger, right?
Yeah, that's so luckily between founders, of course we had disagreements and that's okay.
Sure, yeah.
But we never had a kind of disagreement on some common ground which generates really big conflict. I go left, you go right, I go behind, whatever. But of course I realized with people that worked with us, sometimes when you had conflicts, fundamental problem, right? Like we change a little bit our positioning, our vision, or our focus, and some people say, okay, I joined the company for focus A, now you do B, but I stay, but I leave, but I stay, and then you say, but they are good, so we want to keep them. At the end, it always come back, and you suddenly you take different trajectory, and when you know that's the case, you have to make it happen.
But when you feel that, what you say now, looking back, it's not worth trying to force something to say, hey, we want to go to vision A, but the employee actually signed up for vision B. So it's probably better to say, look, it's just not a good fit because we want different things. So it's better to go separate ways.
Yeah, but the problem usually is you don't have those sort of conversation, and you don't have, let's say, the environment or the platform for, when I say platform, it's not a software, of course. Sure. It's a atmosphere or place or whatever, a setup for that to be genuinely expressed and shared. Because once you do that, and the people feel the best when they actually admit that and say, you know what, I'm going to go back to what I like. Right. And then everybody feel and say, wow, we didn't do that before, right? And I think generally in life, it's hard to get out of something you're in for all sort of reasons. I'm not a psychologist, but you can realize, for somebody to just move somewhere else, right? I live in Zurich. I want to work in Ticino. It's not an easy decision, although maybe it's the right thing for you, but if you look at all the logistic and all this, you're going to say, okay, I shouldn't do that because it's too complicated. No. But you have to take your decision based on things that are the most important, that makes not you, whatever it is, but it has to be the fundamental, component of what makes you who you are and who, being happy and so on and so forth. So, and then you realize, okay, it's really worth it to have those fundamentals, elements to be discussed, right? And once you do that, of course, sometimes you realize you're not made to work together and so on, and then the answer is pretty obvious, but usually it's a relief for everybody, right? Exactly. It's like, sometimes it's not about, I don't want to work here or not, or yes, sorry. It's more, For example, we had also the case of somebody became a regional manager because it was more like okay, you're here since some time, we hire some new people, more juniors, so you're the more seniors, so yeah, cool, right? I managed them and so on, but the guy was not happy. His thing was to go out with customer and, do the hands-on on sales and feel like I did the deal, and that's what he likes, right? And the day you suddenly have a really open conversation to say, wouldn't it be great if you just go and forget those meetings and those, stick and carrot type of approach that with other, oh yeah, that would be fantastic, right? And then okay, now it's only the question how we do it properly, and how we make things for everybody to have now a setup that works, but that's exactly what we have to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right people in the right seat.
And I do a lot of mountaineering and so on, and except if you go alone, right, which is not what I do, but yeah, if you're soloing, you
Sure.
fall, you're dead, and okay, or you succeed and it's you and only you, right? But if you are with one or more people with you, especially if you are on a rope, right? If somebody is much fitter physically than the other and he wants to go his maximum speed and pull the rope like crazy,
Tricky.
even if he has the physical ability, the people behind it won't be comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he will be just exhausted, and first of all, even if they survive, physically,
right,
they will never come back, right? That's for sure.
Yeah.
And if you have which always happen, right? It's because it's a multi-component, right? You have to be physically fit, but you have to take decision based on that have nothing to do with fitness, but with weather or snow condition or whatever, route, where to go, and so on. Yeah. And it's not always the one who is the fastest that has any idea how to do that. Suddenly it's like full of fog, no visibility. Maybe it's the guy behind who has a lot of capability to take the compass and GPS or whatever. And, he has to be still willing to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes, if you pull like crazy, when you get in trouble, it would be he would say, okay, deal with it, right?
Right.
So, and in an organization, it's the same. Yeah. If you keep saying, how much deals, how much leads, whatever, all the time, the guy's like, okay, so you have to adjust that really nicely. And I learned in the mountains very well that you have to keep everything consistent, and so that you can always have the maximum energy and lucidity and everything, and focus everybody, right? Not just one person.
Yeah. In that regard, when we think back to the early days, if I'm not mistaken, you actually didn't really start with a problem in mind, but actually more with an idea to start your own company. Did you also feel that you're pulling, the cord a bit too hard there, and would you do that a bit differently to focus stronger on the problem instead of the idea?
Yeah, it's true that the idea was this real-time monitoring of computers and application in enterprise networks. Mm-hmm. But it was more coming from a technical capability to do that better than what was available. Yeah. And then, of course, the outcome of that and the benefit for clients could be multiples, right? So initially, we saw some benefits in securing the networks and applications better. But then, by doing that with the first customers, they, by visiting them and seeing what they were doing with the product, they were actually focusing on more managing the infrastructure by just saying, wow, for a change now I see really what we have, who uses what, connects where, and I can optimize my infrastructures in terms of cost and performance and experience of employees with all the tools we give them to do their work. And then we had a little bit of both, and they could nicely work together, but there was a lot of a multiplicity of efforts. So at some point we focus more on let's say experience, performance, and things like that, for different reasons. I think that was typical case of uncertainty, right? You could do only all the analysis of the world, and we were asked by, as managers between ourselves, present the pros and cons of each focus, and because you have to choose one, it's getting too complicated.
Sure.
And I don't know, the board and so on. But at the end, what I realized is, both were making sense. I mean, people want security and feeling safe and not having ransomware and so on. But people want also availability and performance and, want to have a good flow when they work with computers. So, and people spend a lot of money in both and so on. So, then you have like 10 good reasons for everything, 10 bad reasons for everything, and you have to make a choice. So, and this is very much representing the fact that when in life, but mainly in entrepreneurship, there is only one certainty, right? It's uncertainty.
Correct.
And you have to accept it and deal with it. And then usually you know what you want by feeling, which is easy when you start from scratch, because when I have a blank sheet, the only way I can decide is by feelings.
Right.
I have no data. I haven't started to do anything, which makes it somehow easier. Of course, when you start to have data, you use the data much more to validate with facts your intuition, right?
Right.
And here, of course, you can look at them the way it goes right for you. What you have to be careful is, to use your intuition against, facts that actually tell what not to do or what to do.
Right. Ideally, they are in sync.
Yes.
But that's not always.
Well, they are
the way
never fully in sync. Yeah. That's the point. And sometimes you have to believe a little bit more your intuition. Sometimes a little bit more the facts and the data. I think that's what you have to, because uncertainty is always there. So even in fact somehow, because things can change.
Of course.
So you have to use both at the best you can, and that's why sometimes you succeed, sometimes not. When you don't, it's not over, right? You have to reconsider, maybe change a bit, But
how do you then make that decision about the right focus for you? Because you didn't really have too much data. Did you more listen to what would bring you more joy, where you would have more fun as a founder team?
No, it was not about fun. I think what I learned was, unfortunately, in terms of what you do, right, as at work, right, whether you are a founder, employee, whatever, you don't necessarily do. It's not because it's your company or your ID that at the end what you do is what you like.
Sure.
Usually it's a little bit the opposite, right? What I like is, building up the company and doing that with the great team, and okay, that stays. But what I have to do now to move the needle, right, is probably not what I prefer. So, but it's the same thing for everybody. So the decision was not based on that. I think the decision was more like, okay, both markets are attractive. Maybe security is even bigger. At least at that time, it was more established and an existing market with many players, which is nice because people know what you're talking about. They have budget defined for next year and the year after.
Right.
But there were already a lot of established players, so more competition with probably more mature technologies and products that we would have to compete with, where we had an opportunity, which was pretty unique, to create a market of digital employee experience where it was a little bit an empty field of players, just a few with everybody very, very small market share. So everything was to be done. Now the question is, will that market really happen?
You don't know at that point, right?
You don't know, but you have some indication. Now it's a bet of, because you can go in a market that exists, but you never succeed because you get beaten up all the time and security is a market that is, if you accept, to someone to secure your house or whatever, you have to trust them, right?
Sure.
And if you've been buying an antivirus for 10 years, now the next level of technology of whatever, security, endpoints, firewall, and so on, comes from the same vendor. You might trust them better, and so it's hard to disrupt the market. It's possible, but it's probably harder. And however, when it's a completely new market, if you have the best solution, and if stars align, the market says we need it, we want that, then it's a much faster hyper-growth penetration style, right? So it happened, but much later, right? So, which implies to have a lot of resilience, and because it's hard to say now we choose, we do that, and it's still difficult. So you need to be resilient, but to stay resilient, not only you need to be psychologically strong, but you need to believe very strong in your choice, not blindly, right? Really genuinely, and I think that is very important.
How do you do that? Because I can imagine the grass is always green on the other side, right? So you decided to go down that path and basically go into a more new market, but then things didn't just develop as fast as you might have hoped for. I can imagine that you also had second doubts and asked yourself, did we make the right decision? Should we change it again? How did you stay on course to then eventually find success and the right timing in the end?
I think you shouldn't compare where you are with the goal, because if you do that all the time, you see yourself not moving, right? It's like if you want to climb Everest, it's so far higher than when you start. If you walk for one day, like 10 hours, and you have 4,000 meter elevation to do, and the first day you do 300 meter, and if you compare with the goal, you just, and you say, well, it's so hard, that's crazy, right?
It can even frustrate you, right?
But if you actually compare from where you start, and you look at, my God, we crossed this incredible hard section, or we broke the trail in deep snow, and that's a great job from everybody who contribute to building the track, or installing ropes or whatever. And you just look at that section and you can say, wow, this is a significant improvement from where we were. And then step by step, because I think that's so. In our particular case, for me, was like, it's what I said. It's about the trend, right? Is it flat, or is it even a little bit, but ramping up? And it's like if you look at any, we had a great example with a pandemic, curve. At the beginning, you're like, well, it's not a big growth, right? And suddenly, it accelerates. So if you see there is that trajectory, you don't know always when, right?
Right.
But you see, what? We have always indicators that, here and there, it validates what we did. Okay, not like completely to the fact that, we are overflowed with orders, but to get there is a lot to do, right? So are we doing the right thing right? And then the timing, you control what you can, which is, if there is something, you say I have to write this document for, publishing on a newspaper to talk about and evangelizing what we believe in, and I want to get it out tomorrow, it's under your control, right?
Right.
To do it. But to have the market telling, this is what we want to do, you don't control that.
Of course,
You can say as much as you want the same thing all over and over. You don't know if it's going to take 1 year, 1 month, or 5 years, or more sometimes. So you shouldn't be comparing like that. Otherwise, you give up for sure.
I love that perspective that you look at the progress where you come from, and if there's progress, stay course, and eventually then hit the rapid growth trajectory, also the timing of the market.
And you have to accept before you start that sometimes you have to come down. It's like I come back to this Everest thing.
Sure.
Although if probably you're not an expert or a specialist,
absolutely not. No.
You or the audience, right? But they have these camps and so on. But they never start from base camp and then they do camp 1 and then camp 2 and 3 and 4 and summit. Yeah. They go camp 1 and 2 for acclimatization. They come down, they recover and they go. So it's very frustrating because you can go pretty high. Maybe the summit is close to reach and boom, you go all the way down. Yeah. And you stay like 1 week or sometimes 10 days for acclimatization reason, oxygen stuff and so on, but also sometimes weather. But it doesn't mean you're not going to make it, right? Yeah. But if you don't go there for this project knowing that is going to happen, and you can say, okay, I have a plan, I do this 3 times, but although if you have done it before, you know a little bit how your body reacts because everybody is different, right? Like every business is different, and you cannot always copy paste. So, and maybe you say, okay, I'm going to have to do 3 times up and down, whatever camp number, and maybe you have to do it 5 times, because of your body, because of weather, because of equipment stuff, whatever, right? Colleagues with you, right? Teammates and so on, issues that you have to deal with. So you have to accept that. And usually, things take more time, requires more energy, resources, financial, human, whatever, to actually usually achieve less than what was actually the goal. Right. And that's why managing only by goals, which is like win or lose, is really not a good thing, in my opinion, because it creates a lot of frustration, because the fact is things do not go, there is always something going wrong, right? Of course. Which requires adaptation, sometimes a little bit of retreat, coming back, and every time there is something wrong, nobody even thought it could happen, it's a disaster. If you know it could happen, and it could even be a little bit worse than we think, and to recover from that, a little bit more effort than we think and time, I'm ready to actually do it, probably, when it happens. And if I'm lucky, it's actually a little bit less than I thought of a hard work, of a fall, right, to recover from. And then you have a chance to keep everybody, together and still motivated and so on.
With these ups and downs, as a founder and as a startup company particularly, how do you personally stay fit and healthy to be able to perform not only on a physical, but especially on a mental level?
It can be hard because it takes a lot of your time, you could. I think it's important to realize 2 things. You need a lot of work and a lot of effort to grow a company or to do a ambitious project, whatever it is, right? But and again, if you look at the amount of things that have to be accomplished, you have to realize, you cannot do it in a time frame because it's going to take much more than that, that you can sustain a work style that is, like 24/7. Right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but there are things that, if you say, okay, I don't know, there are people who run, 200 kilometers one shot, right? There are some ultra marathon and things like that. It is just, okay, you could do it, right? Not everybody succeeds, but it's possible, right? So you don't sleep, you just eat while you run and, crazy thing. Yeah. But the entrepreneur journey is not like that. It's more I want to walk around the world. So it's not something you just start naked almost and you just go for it until the end. There is no chance you can do that. So but sometimes we act like that, and I would say some period where I think I was way too much on it, which from outside or people interacting with you, it looks like you achieve a lot, but I'm not sure first of all, you don't sustain like that for a very long time. And probably if you look at the trend of your productivity and ideas and ability to make the right decisions or to realize there is something wrong somewhere. Sure. Probably the trend is more going down. Yeah. And that's not good, right? So, so you're right. You have to be really paying attention of, okay, there is a business to build with, people to manage and to work with and so on. But to do that really well, you have to be, on the work with your full energy and potential. And for that, you need some time to recharge and, and do other things.
How do you exactly do that yourself? Do you have any tips or things that worked particularly well for you?
So for me, so first of all, if you have a passion, right, that you like outside your work, which I hope everybody has something. If you don't, find one. Yeah. For two reasons. One, your business can go out of business. It happens more than business succeed, right? True. Yeah. Even in very great economic times, it was like that. More startup fail than succeed. Sure. I think in the coming years it won't go better because the economy is not so great. There will still be success, but still be more failure. I don't know if there will be more, but
it's still
before.
But
yeah. So it's always good to have something to fall back on. Not to feel fully lost, right? So it's always good to have at least almost two things, right? So you can have your business and your family or your sport or, I don't know, you do painting, music, whatever, right? Yeah. And to pay attention, not to lose touch with that, right? And at the end, I think everybody can do, maybe you book half a day or you book week, you take some time for that. And then it's about knowing that, if you are not available for half a day or a weekend, because I think it's not the end of the world, it's probably even better. And if you have to be available all the time for everybody in the company, I think something's wrong. Is something wrong? It's not because people cannot deal without you. It's more the way it's organized. It's more the way, it's because the leadership is not distributed, right? And what I learned was, usually we talk about delegation, right? Which is, I think we have to look much more for distribution, because it's not the same. Delegation means, if I could, I would do it myself, but I don't have time, so you do it.
Right. Yeah.
But, it's more like, you do it, but I'm supervising what you do. Right?
You're still the bottleneck to a certain degree.
And I'm still somehow, looking at it, and you are reporting, and I can ask, and and I'm worried how you do everything. Sure. So then there is a different level, right? People will be on your neck every hour, some people every week, but at the end, that's what delegation is about. So, and you, because it's been delegated to do this like that, of course, over the days and weeks, suddenly things are a bit different. So the recipe I gave you as a delegation is not working. Yeah. And you say, we should change that. There is no eggs available, so I would like to put something else. Yeah. But I have to call the guy who delegated to me to ask if we can change. Yeah. If it's distribution, I distribute the role, the ownership, the leadership for that. You take care of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we'll see. We'll discuss one day about how this went, right? I think that's a little bit different.
And I like that difference. Yeah.
We need to do a bit more of that, right?
Handing over more ownership and letting people do it their own way and trusting them, basically.
So for me, that reminds me now. As a tip, I remember, because of course at the beginning you're very few, so you do a little bit of everything. You have a little bit more resource. So now you have somebody who is in charge of something, and then it's hard to do that distribution. It's if you have a baby, you give it to someone. I imagine you would be like it's hard to or impossible for a human baby, right? To distribute the care. You delegate to a nanny or somebody like that. You don't distribute for sure, which is okay for a baby, I guess. Because if you distribute, it's close to adoption, right?
True.
That's my point, right? So to move from founding the company, carrying it, blah, 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 and then some other people, a bit strangers, right, are in the to distribute to them. It's like you tell, okay, I give you the marketing and you adopt it, right? It's your baby now. And that's hard, right? And that's something you have to, I don't think I did it very well because I was a little bit trying to help, right? I know how actually, okay, I do it, right? Or I help you do it, but I actually do it myself. And then the other people feel like whether stupid, of course, not empowered. And then the next time they would say, okay, last time he did it. So now, I just let it on his hand, right?
Yeah.
So I did, at the end, I did that distribution when it was so overwhelming that I couldn't actually do anything else but working, and then you realize, oh, that's not working. So this, I should have done it way earlier and take the decision, which one day will come anyway. So I would say the sooner the better, because, it's like children, when their mistakes have less consequences at 2 years old than 15.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing here.
I like that analogy. I think that's a great learning to reflect upon.
So don't be afraid to distribute, because earlier on, it won't hurt. It can hurt, but it's not that damaging, and you realize it much faster. Because of course, if you have 15 people in the organization, the feedback loop they are very instantaneous, right? It's very quick to figure it out. Yeah. When you're 50 or 100,
it's a bit difficult.
There are even people you don't know they are in the company, right? So that day, just an anecdote, but I remember that discussion we had one day in a management meeting, that we had always this, okay, how many employees we have, new hire, people who left, and we didn't have that many people leaving, so those numbers were, of course, single digit, but sometimes 2, 3, right? Yeah. And okay, 3 people left, so who? Him, her, blah, blah, blah. And there was this name one day. That was the first time I didn't know the name. And I was like, oh my God, I realized we are growing and we are losing a little bit, the direct touch. Yeah. So when you're there, it's a little bit different. But you better have a really great distributed leadership when you're there, because if it's not the case, then of course, how can you control that? No way.
You can't manage that with a delegation at that point, right? When you don't know the people anymore. You have to have the distribution, as you explained it before. It's crucial.
Yes.
Another challenge I want to talk about is, you grew to unicorn status. So of course you also needed to acquire customers. And I want to talk about how you actually did the international sales setup. So first, who were your ideal customers and what was the business model that you actually sold to them?
Okay, so Nexthink is a B2B model. So we do an enterprise software for large organizations, because with monitoring user experience with application and computers is a problem that becomes a real problem when you have a large amount of people. Yeah. Because more or less, just to give an idea, people lose about 20 minutes a day average on computer problems. I'll say someday there is no problem, sometimes you have a 1 hour downtime or whatever. So hopefully, when you have something that helps you monitor and anticipate proactively the problem, you can take that number down, maybe not to 0, but let's say divide by 2. So if you take 10 minutes saved by employee, if you are 5 people, you don't even save 1 hour. It doesn't make any sense. But if you have a company of 10,000 or 100,000 people, that's millions, right?
Huge leverage, right?
It's huge. Yeah. So that's basically the business case, if you want. Plus, there is some side effect of making people more engaged, because if I'm not frustrated because I cannot do my work and I have to call this service desk that tells me, do you have the plug? Did you turn on yeah, I did. That's why 50% of people don't call anymore. Yeah, and they just work with the problems, right? Yeah. And organization is not aware of the problems and cannot even fix it. So we can discover and help. And then there is also this engagement of making, people more satisfied at work so they don't leave. talent stays, or even I can recruit because the organization has not this reputation of a crappy work environment where nothing works. Yeah. So that's basically what we can bring. So we targeted those large organizations mainly. So from that, it depends. But initially in Switzerland, when we started, we took basically enterprise from the local market. So not everybody is above 10,000. It's more between 1,000 to 20,000, let's say. The biggest being like the big canton, states, or hospitals, university hospitals, and the multinational companies that are based here. Right. And then, of course, it was implicit to move abroad because, Nexthink has the business of Nexthink, unicorn status, way over 100 million ARR, is made out of 1,000, 1,500 customers. So a lot of large organization. It's not a massive volume. It's a massive volume of endpoints and employees that we monitor, but not amount of. It's not a transactional business, right? Where we process 1,000 invoice a day, right? Yeah. So that, but that's for sales. It plays a role because it's a very strategic decision, multi-year engagement, not just financially, but just mentally, right? You deploy that, it's for a little bit long term. So the sales cycle is not something you sell in a couple of weeks, and it's something you sell at strategic level, direct touch. So we had to meet those organizations, and because they are bigger, they are also a little bit organized in a way you don't talk to one person that says, let's go, and I deploy and I pay. There is multi-dimension processes there. So it requires some serious client management. So you need a little bit senior people as well. Yeah. But basically we had people. Of course, there is support for that with marketing and sales engineering, consulting, and so on. But basically, it's a direct/indirect sales, because we also leverage partners who are in touch with those potential clients for projects of digitalization and all sort of things, with whom we work hand in hand to sell.
But you basically built your own sales force, right?
Yes.
And where did you build them? Did you say, we want to sell out of Switzerland because that's where your headquarters are? Or did you say, hey, we actually do want to go to local markets like the US, for example, and build a local sales force there to be closer to the market?
Okay, so maybe interesting to explain a bit how it went, because if somebody is listening who would like to do or is about to do that. So we started in Switzerland. The only office we had was here in Lausanne. We started selling in the French part of Switzerland, then also Zurich, German side. And then we had very quickly some touches in France. Yeah. We started with healthcare, hospital, a little bit opportunistically, let's say. It was not like a strategic thing, but then we had this first customer there driving there, and it was close to the border, but still it was manageable, right? Yeah. Because we had 5-6 hospitals maybe at the beginning there. It was possible to travel and do that from Lausanne. And then we moved to, because of the connections from those hospitals, trying to leverage that more broadly in France, we had to go through Paris. It's very centralized, and also that's where most businesses are. So at the beginning, we were taking the train, going to Paris, meeting people, coming back. And I remember that day when on the way back to Lausanne with the TGV, I had this call or mail, I don't remember, from this guy to have a meeting tomorrow. Right? So basically I booked a ticket in the train. So when I arrived in Lausanne, I took it back to go.
Next train back.
Something like that, Yeah. And very quickly you realize, maybe we were not in this era of video conferencing, but I still think you need in those businesses, strategic, B2B.
Yeah.
People need to see each other, shake hands,
Right.
have a drink, as well as talk about the technology, right? So you realize, okay, that won't scale at all, right? And again, for what I said before, it was very tiring, and
Of course.
once you do that, you don't do anything else. And then you cannot always tell the people, I was trying that, right, to regroup meetings and so on, but you don't
Difficult,
control.
yeah.
That's
Sure.
what I was talking about. There are things you don't control. So we looked for having some local resources. So initially we had them as contractors because, you cannot hire in Germany, in France, in UK, and like this with a Swiss contract. There are some implications. So we did like that. And then we started having local offices with local teams. So in France, in Germany, in UK, in Middle East, and then in US. But basically, my learning from that is don't start too small, because every time we opened up, because we had opportunities a little bit emerging, because if you shake the tree, there is always something falling, right? But what falls is not the best fruit, right?
Right.
At the beginning, right? So you say, something is falling, let's do it, right? And because you don't have a prepared, funded strategy, let's say, you can only start, you say, okay, I shake there, but I didn't plan to be there, right? But it's because it's there, right? Sometimes it was also through partners. We had international companies. So I work with the partner in Switzerland and France. He has a colleague in Germany. And then the guy said, that's great. I want to also sell Nexthink. He booked some meetings. You go, lucky, bad luck, customer wants a POC, and then maybe he orders it. So then you travel, and then you say, okay, I need someone. So you hire one guy because you didn't have the budget to build a team.
Yeah, sure.
And then, okay, you do that customer or these two customers, and then, because of course things do not happen by magic. So if you don't proactively generate opportunities, they don't come.
Yeah.
So then it becomes almost more an issue than an advantage. And the poor guy alone, or lady, right, that you just hired for the local market, struggling a lot, right? I was saying they are like us when we were the first in Switzerland. It's even worse because at least you choose to build this product. You know everything. It's your baby. Now they are with your own baby that, they cannot say, I love him as much as you do, right? So he's crying. So I'm a little bit, I struggle with that. So that was hard. So everywhere we started a little bit, not consciously, let's say, with a strategy and with the capability to have a serious team. I'm not talking about 50 people.
Sure, but more than one.
More than one, for two reasons. Alone, it's psychologically very hard to do everything, right? You don't know, and it's not fun. Second is when it doesn't work, because usually that's the case.
Sure.
As you expect and so on. It's hard to know. Is it the person? Is it the market? What if you have 2-3 people active and you see if something is, gets out of someone, right? And then, okay, what do you do there differently than others, than ourselves? Okay, in Germany or UK, it works a little bit differently. And then you can adjust. And so the good thing is to not start when you cannot afford, something, like a minimum vital environment, let's say.
It's an investment also, right? Of course.
And then you have to think, right? Because the tendency is, as you said before, the greener field where you're not. There is this tendency of, okay, it's not running so well there, let's go also there, right? Because there it looks fantastic. But what I always say is, how much do you want to do as revenue? Usually it's not like 50 million, huh?
Sure.
Maybe you're going to say 2 million.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 million more. You don't need to be if you have to be in Germany and UK and France to do that,
something's wrong.
Something's wrong for your future, right?
Yeah. Right.
So you better be in one place and do it really well. Yeah. It's a little bit like the product you do. It has to be doing one thing really, really well so that you stand out from others on the market, because if everything is average, then it can start well, but then very quickly, things flattened. So you need this acceleration, almost endless, right? And feed it. And for that, you need this focus.
Absolutely.
And in the US was the same. So we started because, suddenly it appears to be the right time. We were not always aligned on those decisions, but which is okay. But again, by going too small, again, it's too hard for those people there. It's too hard from here to manage it well. So again, and sometimes you also need to go yourself.
Of course.
Opening up is completely different than growing.
Yeah.
And except founders or very, very special people that could have joined a little bit later, the company can open from scratch, in my opinion.
I have two follow-up questions on that topic, because I think that's highly fascinating and also very, very important to build a larger company, a larger startup. The first one that I want to ask is, where do you actually find the people? Because many startups complain that it's so difficult to find and hire salespeople. So how did you recruit, train, and also find them in the end to join your company and bring you more deals and more revenue in a new market?
Okay, I would say everything you have to do in an entrepreneurship journey is hard, but this one is not just hard, it's very important and critical. But I think it all starts from, because when you have to hire, I would say massively, right? I'm not talking about the first sales, but when you need to grow the company, this is not something you can do bottom up. It has to be top down. What I mean by that is you have to recruit sales leaders that if they have to have one single, very, very, the best skills, right? If it has to be one, it's hiring, recruiting, which is not knowing how to interview people. It's about knowing people and having this credibility and this attraction, right, against those people, so that when they say, I'm moving to this new company, the other they say, I want to come work with you.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to hire people like that.
Who bring the network.
Who bring their network, but in a way that, it's like a magnet, right? Because if the first thing they have to do is, who is the HR recruitment department? I want them to place an ad, that is going to fail.
Yeah.
Because what is hard for others will be hard for you. So the only way it's easier, faster, because that's also a question of time. If you have to recruit 20 people in sales in the next 3 months, if nobody can do that with LinkedIn or whatever HR platform, you won't do it either. And that's the only way it works. And second, it's not just about recruiting, it's about recruiting the right people. It's not just about skills, and that's what I think people miss most of the time. It's about attitude. So you need to actually make that, because this you cannot really change. Skills, I can teach them. Okay, you need a base, right? Of course, I cannot, for selling software, if you hire a carpenter, maybe it's a little bit lack of skills even to get started. But we hired I remember this guy he was selling coffee and coffee machines at Nestle, but to enterprise, not like a...
Right.
And he wanted to be in software and so on. He didn't know how to do software sales but at the end, as I said, it's about attitude. Attitude to care about the customer, their problems, to be curious and knowing, what is difficult for you and be willing to help, a lot of empathy. So those attitude, curiosity, empathy, and also grit, I'm going to work, I want to help them, right?
Sure.
And I'm going to complain back to the product guys, these customers, that's what they want. We should do this and, and help me to deliver that. And let's be creative on how we could, even we don't have exactly the right feature, can we, squeeze things? And so that is more important than skills like, I've been in sales for 20 years, never missing a quarter.
Yeah.
But if you cannot work with the team, you cannot adapt to the culture of the company.
Yeah.
It's not going to work.
Then you will miss a quarter.
So there is a much better. Yeah, it's true. There is a much better chance that if I hire like a magnet, people I know, they know me.
Yes.
If we've been successful together, it means, we at least this group, worked well together, and there is a chance they succeed again. Of course, you need, but it's about the manager first, right? It also happened that you could hire a manager that doesn't fit with your organization really well in terms of, then he will recruit people like him, then it's even worse. So
yeah, exactly. It's
so
like
that's
a spiral.
Also that's also the danger, right? So it's not just the ability to recruit, it's to our ability to recruit with this fit and create a bigger group that stick together.
Exactly.
Not that isolates even more, right? And sometimes it can happen, right? And then you have to react fast because it can create some distances between people, and it can be a bit complicated.
Right. Once you then found the talent or the right leaders and then the talent, how do you split the roles? Did you have, a very dedicated sales process where you say, here's like a business development rep to qualify, then an account executive to actually close the deal? How did you organize the sales teams?
So at the beginning, when we grew and started to have, 10 or more people per region, let's put it this way, which were mainly sales and pre-sales engineers, and then country manager or sales country manager. There is one thing to take into account, and I think we did well, was you don't do that, simultaneously. So you start maybe a bit earlier there, a bit later there, and so on. And therefore, there is a level of maturity, first, that is different. Yeah. And second, you have to accept that what worked somewhere is not necessarily what you have to do somewhere else for two reasons. Maybe culturally or whatever doesn't fit much, or you did something that worked, but it's not optimum, right? And so what we started to do was to listen to the different regions and their proposition, and say, okay, let's try what you propose there and see how it goes, right? And then if it doesn't go well, okay, forget it. If it goes well and better than anywhere else, let's see, is it like a local special case, and we keep it because it works, or is it something that can be applied somewhere else that can also be leveraged, right? So I give you one example. We didn't have any, let's say, inside sales type of thing, because it's B2B. So we hire the guys, they go meet directly the customer, they figure it out. Our leader in the UK said, I would like to have some, young people out of school, doesn't cost, they book meetings, they can even do short demos, and, like it's done also in large organization everywhere, but I was like, I'm not sure we are at this point, but okay, let's give it a try. And it was also said, but in the UK, whatever reason, right? Yeah. So sometimes you have to be, I'm always skeptical, it's different here than there. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not, right? Yeah. But as a matter of fact, it went really well. And nowadays, we have this everywhere, right? So it's the same thing with maybe the way you sell, the demos, the presentation. So we never had this, like, you have a sort of recipe, but not framed in stone. And, like, if you don't do that, you don't get your commission, even if you sell. This is crazy, right? Yeah. But so you need to give a degree of liberty, and for also discovering, because you're in a constant learning process. You cannot say I know everything, right? Of course. And the challenge is not always to make the new people. And at some point you have this reverse thing. It's that it's easier with the new people because they will adopt the latest best practices. Sure. And you have the more senior people who are here since 10 years or 5 or whatever, they have to de-learn and relearn, and that's not always easy either. So you need a great onboarding. It's also a very challenging thing to put in place. Hiring is one thing, but if people don't know what they have to do, and
crucial.
Then it depends on the local manager. Some do a good job, some not, and it doesn't work. But also you need to do this continuous learning, de-learning, improvement. So that's very important. And you shouldn't do it, which is sometimes the case with organization. There is this one guy does this best sales of the month or the year, and he's taken as the example. But you have to be very, as I said before, is it based on a trend and so on, or is it just or is it a great performance, but like a corner case, special case? That nobody will copy paste because it's
maybe a lucky punch, right?
Well, lucky, but sometimes it's not just luck; it's good work, but in a way that no one else will be able to do that,
right?
Because maybe it requires a special context and maybe a specific person. That you can do. I know some guys. I was amazed. I say I could never do what they do. The way they do it. I'm not saying sign that deal. Maybe yes, maybe no, but not that way. But it's not because they succeed this way that they should stop. But we should not say because it's the best deal or the biggest. It's actually the best duplicatable process, right? So you have to really look a little bit beyond the surface.
Right. I feel like we could just do one episode on that topic alone. One last challenge or obstacle that I want to talk to you about is after 15 years in 2019, you then decided to actually leave your operational role at Nexthink. So I was wondering, why was that the right time to do so and to also sort of let go of the operational part? I mean, unicorn status, good business. Why would you leave?
I'm sure now people who listen, they would say, hearing what you just said, this guy is crazy, right? He's talking about things that looks really interesting and promising and successful, and maybe with some sort of enthusiasm or passion. Why suddenly you just let go, right? So I answer that in two ways, right? Who hasn't, if you look at what you do today, is it, or what you like, or the way you live, or what you're about to do tomorrow, is it exactly what you've always been doing? Probably not, right? So whatever you are in, there at some point, there is something else that will be happening in your life, or whether it's your choice or not, right? And sometimes it's driven by external factors, which in that case wasn't. It was a conscious decision, which I think is always better because, and it was not an anticipation of actually because the company was successful at this point. So I was not. Sometimes it's worth thinking, right? Should I go before they let me go, right? Because you have some degree of negotiation that are probably better, but that wasn't the case. It was much more looking at everything else but the company, right? And saying, okay, what do I want in life? Where do I want? Let's say I'm still alive in 10 years. You never know, right? What do I want to have been doing over this next 10 years, right? A little bit more growth, a little bit more hiring sales, a little bit more product release. Wow. Okay, I've done it, right? And now and I think, of course there are exciting, times even today for the company. But I was at a point where, I was not excited as much as I used to, I would say. And I think, yes, maybe not. It was not about renunciation of something. It was more about willing to do something else, right? And you cannot do everything. So, and the way I let that go was a little bit progressive. Let's put it this way. It was not like one morning I go and say, okay, goodbye. So you do a bit. when I left, I had no more team. I had no more team under supervision. I was more working project by project, taking some resource to work with me, and and when I was about to start a new project, I decided that somebody else will do it, and then I will leave the operations of the company, and I know what I wanted to do outside that, so I had no depression, or it's not like you feel bored or alone, or that was not the plan, that was not the program, right? It was really between where you are, your expectations, and what you value, and things like that. So it's and I think it's sometimes healthy. I think it's worse, right? If you have somebody who is used to be bullish and so on, and suddenly is getting a little bit frustrated, or not feeling exactly at his place, if you want. So no, it was I think, of course, it's always, you leave something that I had a great pleasure to build, that I could have. The problem is always, it's like if you do I was talking about this ultra marathon, right? You can always do one more step.
Sure.
Right? It
never stops. Basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you look this one more step, to go to the goal you've set yourself, that's how you have to do it. Because if you say, oh my God, it's 100 kilometers I have to run, how many steps is that? I don't know how many thousands, right? So you get depressed. So you do one at a time. Yes. And when you are very tired, you say, if I quit this race, it means I cannot do the next one. No, I could. So that's a good way to visualize such a race. And when you want to quit a big part of what is in your life, the reason you don't, it's because one more step is always possible. Yeah. But what you have to look at is to go where, to do what. Because if one more step is possible, so I should do it. Yeah, but the next one, and then you're never out of it.
Exactly.
So you have to say, okay, but basically, if you don't see anymore where this is heading, it means, I want to head somewhere else, and you move out. But of course, you can always do a little bit more.
Sure.
And then you have to realize, okay, I don't do it, and that's the idea.
Have you ever regretted, now looking back, that you left?
No, never. No, I think it's. I even I looked like very recently, last 2 weeks, or it was a big release of a completely new platform product. Very happy for the company, the team, that they could accomplish this great performance and fantastic product. I just booked with the head of product a demo. I'm going to go to the office in 2-3 weeks because I'm interested to see it. But I'm happy but I remain a shareholder of the company, so I'm happy if the company stays healthy and well. But I'm not, part of it besides that. And no, I'm not feeling like, that's exactly the point, right? It's like, it's not, because I didn't have any more this goal, right? I want to be there the day this happens. Yeah. Of course, then you do the next steps and the next. So for me, it was like, okay, what could be the next, let's say, milestone in this adventure? Not a new product release, because I've lived so many, completely new product and so on. So we can always do another one. Maybe IPO, okay? I never lived that, but I probably never will. But that was for me something, too far out to imagine continuous step. It's like, you don't have 100 kilometers to do, but 1,000, right? So it was too blurry, right? If you want. And so that's why I'm not regretting anything. And I've done so many other things in the meantime, and I'm always looking and I'm saying, wow, okay, now the company valuation is much higher. If I had kept my shares, the shares I sold, I would be having even more money. But then you say, yeah, but so what, right? I wouldn't have done all what I did, because there is one thing it's hard to buy, it's time, right? And the opportunity to to use the time really the way you, without a lot of constraints,
Right.
which is what I wanted. Because it's one thing to be able to, take a day off or have flexible work time, which was the case at Nexthink. But you still have a lot of parameters around you that can put you at certain level of stress, which is not very compatible with, going to do some challenging, mentally, physically challenging climbs, for example,
Right.
which I like to do, which for me is easier now because I can focus. I don't have 20 things on the side, which is a way to also do it very relaxed.
Absolutely. Now, of course, you also wonder, what will you do in the future? What are your plans for the future? Do you want to build another company? Do you want to work on other projects that you already started and initiated? What will be your focus for these days and beyond?
So I know what I can do now. As I said very earlier, right? So I never lived with, plans. What do I do after what I do is over, right? As I said, I wanted to attempt, to be proficient in sport. I did what I could, probably reach my limits. And once you're there, you say, okay. But while I was doing it, I was never thinking, what do there is an end.
Yeah.
But you don't know when. So I never worried what's going to be next. And then I was working at Cisco, and I know, probably there will be an end. I will get fired, or I will get tired of it, or suddenly there is another opportunity. I had no idea, and I was not thinking about it. Yeah. And suddenly, boom, you are in front of something that generates some special feelings for you, and you say, okay, I'm ready to give up on this great salary in this great company with a lot of comfortable work situation, which was my case, to go to this unpaid, crazy stuff that nobody believes in except us, which probably we should, usually when you're only three to believe in something and the rest of the world doesn't, means usually you're wrong, right?
Right.
So you want to prove the contrary, which I found it pretty exciting. Yeah. And when I started Nexthink, I had no idea if it would last. At the beginning, I thought it would end at 2006 because we were out of money and out of everything except some energy, still a little bit. And then we had some re-energized events, which allowed us to continue and ramp up. But I couldn't say I never said I do that 5 years and then if I don't reach this. I had no idea, right? So as long as I have the ability to deliver at the right level, that I believe not so many others could, I'm ready to continue. So now, if what I do, I'm able to do it, and I have a passion and happiness, I'm not thinking about what's next. But I know it could be a great adventure somewhere. Yeah, I mean, you don't decide, right? Yeah. Especially if you have a little bit of freedom to operate with the way your life is set up, right? So, but what you don't decide is, if you meet somebody or a context that, you say, wow, that I would be ready to put 100% of my time into that. Yes. If when this happens, it happens, right?
True. Yeah.
Then you do it or not, that's something else. But voila, that's so now I'm a lot involved with, because I like to think about, how to create a new business, new product, new business model, and develop a company. So I'm more involved from advisor, board member, investor, into startup projects or other projects where there is something. So I look also about the meaning of this, but at the moment I'm happy with the way to be a little bit more saying what you should do if I were you and not doing it myself, which is very comfortable.
Yeah.
But I know one day maybe I say I would like to do it by myself.
Sure. Yeah.
Why not doing it?
Let's see what the future
Exactly.
brings.
So I don't have a plan, and I think that's very. It's a very it's a big luxury. You know, I don't have a jet or a big yacht, or I don't sleep in 5-star hotels all the time. Big, crazy travel, but my luxury is liberty of choice of these kind of things. A lot of time for myself, which is also valuable, or if not more.
Absolutely.
And you never know when it ends, because it can end. Because of you never know, what happened outside.
Sure.
One day, everybody's out of money, because everything collapses. Why not? Or you get a health issue, and and then it's even not anymore the question, right?
Of course. The priorities shift.
Yes, very quickly. And I learned that the hard way. If you do mountaineering. The sad thing on that, it's very beautiful, it's very amazing to do this climbs and this, great sceneries and great time sharing with people. But there is some risk, right?
Of course.
And sometimes the risk leads to, people not coming back. And then everybody I know who is pretty active up there, they have people that were close who who didn't come back, and a lot of people tell me, so that should, you don't go anymore. It's the contrary, right? Because you don't go blindly, there is also, but you realize things can change very rapidly, and it's not only maybe they don't die, but if you end up, not walking or, it's also a very big shift in your life. But it can happen also driving a car or whatever. So, but you learn it a little bit maybe more. And this, also, I would say, made me also decide to shift a little bit priorities for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yes. To wrap up the conversation, Vincent, we have some rapid fire questions for you prepared. Okay. So I give you a question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in just one sentence.
Questions were not submitted, huh?
No, absolutely not.
I'm scared.
You ready?
Yes.
The first one, when was the last time that you changed your mind on something important?
I don't know. I think it's something you do every day.
Yeah.
Yes,
sure.
For sure. Yes.
How many hours of sleep did you get last night?
Probably 9.
Nice.
I have an average of 8, 9.
That's
at least every night now.
That's perfect.
Which wasn't the case before, and that's also contributing to some, I think, healthy lifestyle. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Beer or wine?
Why choose?
Both.
Yes.
Mountains or the sea?
Oh, mountains.
That's a clear choice. What's the most important quality entrepreneurs should have, if you can just pick one?
Passion.
I like that. What are you most proud of in your life?
I'm proud of having always tried my best.
I like that.
That's what I want to say. Yeah, because in cycling, of course, I had I was lucky enough to be in the same team as a couple of guys who ended up on the podium in Tour de France and so on. So I raced with people who had a lot of talent. They were very good. I could not reach, so I was a little bit below. But I did my best, right? Mm-hmm. So at the end you can say, if I say I'm proud of this, you could say, yeah, but you didn't achieve, the highest level. But, and probably in business it's the same, What is a 1 million valuation when you have startups, 100 million, billion,
sure.
Valuation. So, but at least I always tried my best in things I put the focus on. Mm-hmm. Yes, and I also allowed myself to do just best effort on other things. Yeah. But yes.
What does money mean to you?
It means problem. When there is too much.
I like that too.
But of course, when it's in your pocket, it's problems. Mm-hmm. When it's in purpose, it's a good thing.
Yeah, wonderful. The last question for you today, Zurich or Lausanne?
Zinal, where I live now.
Good answer. I like that. Vincent, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you. I feel like we could go on for hours to talk about your journeys and learnings along the way. All the best, lots of success for the future, and thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.